There are, for instance, in this path, there are lots of candles. There are about 300 luminaries here, and with about 30 of us, that means that 15 pairs of people would roughly be able to light how many? 20. So if you've lit 60,
people, help me out here.
If you've lit 60, slow down so someone else can at least light one. At this point, I would invite you to come back in about a half an hour to 40 minutes, and I'm going to light some with my partner, and Mike will head down that way. So I would suggest that maybe kind of turn around and head out from this circle and up, and we'll eventually light all of them in the 40 minutes that we have, and then feel free to go around the memorial, the full width and breadth of it, to come back, and then at about 10:30, for those of you that would like to continue, we'll have some moments of silence, particularly at 10:34, which is the beginning of the 8th year of the conflict in Iraq. If you could get back here about 10:15 to 10:20, we would invite you to share thoughts, a word, a very short thought or wish or hope, and then we'll break after about 10:45. So be at peace with lighting the candles. Enjoy the time, and we'll see you back here in about a half an hour. Come. In many ways, Salam is the reason that we're here. It didn't seem right to start on a project without having a chance to talk to someone from Iraq about, what's appropriate, how does one do this? Looking at the internet, the Najaf graveyard, the largest in the world, I believe, had a different look than our graveyards do. And Salam has routinely been direct and simple and brief and eloquent. Well, this is for where are you showing this? Where? Doug, think about it. You're showing it in America, right? To Americans. So having it look like something in Najaf is going to look like nothing, because they can't relate to that. So you will notice that the marker for his brother, which was the first marker made for someone in the memorial, which is up on the edge of the column a ways, has a shape of a American tombstone on it, which does occur in Iraq, but not frequently. They're more square, and the tomb is, of course, facing Mecca, which is here in that direction. And even the idea of having the markers all face Mecca, while that was meaningful, who are you talking to, Doug? You're talking to Americans. So it's fitting that he's here today. He has said he would travel to wherever the memorial goes. So if you would like to have the memorial come to where you are, I think Salam will probably be there too. He does need some advance notice, though. I remember this night 7 years ago. I must be really naive, because I was still in shock. How could a month ago, 15, 20 million people say to the world in the largest ever demonstration against war, for peace, just be a silent voice to the very few? And I don't want to repeat what we all still feel hurting inside of us, but I want to invite those of you that would like to share a word or two tonight to share that with us.
Here, but on the news, you're always you're not looking good on the news worldwide, and it's really nice to see that there's people that are aiming for change, that to see that Americans are willing to change, are willing to give peace, and it's really great to see that although we are just a few of us here, it's meaningful. We are saying something to the world, and that's important. So I'm really proud of all the people that are here and all the things that you're doing. So thanks for having a voice, and thanks for standing against this war that it's nonsense.
Don't see the news that the rest of the world sees. They have no idea. They really don't have any idea. No, they have no idea how Iraq has suffered and the consequences of the invasion and the occupation. They're just oblivious to it, unfortunately.
When the war first started, when the occupation first started, I was very, very affected by it emotionally, and I really was having breakdowns and couldn't handle it. Couldn't handle people not understanding why this was so horrible and why I felt the pain of children dying on the other side of the world. And I really tuned it out for 5 years. Really just went dumb American and didn't pay attention and didn't care, because it was so much easier to do that. And I came back into this community, and 5 years after the war had started, I came back into the peace community, and it was so nice to be supported. I certainly was welcomed by some of these people standing in this circle right away, and I would say for those of you who are new, who this is your first experience, or even those of you who've been around forever, it's the community that makes it happen, because I can't be here. I can't do this by myself. I can't think about it by myself. And I can think about it when I'm here with you, and I can cry about it when I'm here with you, and I can express my feelings when I'm here with you. And I'm so grateful for this opportunity to be in this community and not to shut it out and not to feel alone about it. So thank you.
Say thank you to Doug, because I don't know if everybody knows, but a lot of this wouldn't have been possible without the work that you've put into this, and I think that the visual impact that it makes is irreplaceable in the minds of the people who are here and for the people who walk by. And I really respect and admire the courage that you've had to sacrifice things in your own life to make a difference for us all, and that means a lot, and I think that everybody here can appreciate you for that. Thank you.
Great job, everyone. This has turned out amazing. It looks great. It's been a great impact. Many people have come up and talked to us today, and we've really been able to spread the message. But I also want to mention that for us young people, we didn't live through Vietnam and different situations like that, so we grew up in the Bush time news and that kind of brainwashing. And so I think a big part of this has to do with education, and especially teachers, and teachers who are willing to stand up and teach their students something that most people won't. So that's Linda Pershing in this group right now.
All right. Real to me when I met Carlos and Melida Arredondo, who lost their son, whose son was killed in Iraq. And when I saw the memorial that Carlos has created, maybe some of you have seen it, with a coffin that he rolls on a wagon with the pictures of his son. The date on the coffin is exactly 1 month older than my own daughter, and then the war became real. Then I realized we're talking about losing our kids to this. and talking to Carlos and Melida about what that has done to their lives, suddenly I got it. And I think the big problem right now in the United States is unless people are personally affected, they don't get it, and they don't have to get it because the news doesn't cover it. But the pain of watching what they had been through and thinking, had it been my own daughter, I have no idea how I would have coped with that. Suddenly that loss is real. So we have to remember these are people's mothers and fathers and daughters and sons, and then it matters.
Rohan Suleiman, 8 months old, crawling over the scrap piece of metal her brother brought home that exploded.
I'm 18 years old, and so September 11th attacks happened when I was in 5th grade. So the wars are all I've ever known. And after today, with the action we had earlier and this, if anyone asks why I'm an activist, I have to answer because I don't think I could live any other way. This is all it's too much to handle.
21-year-old who thought he knew everything but realized that I didn't know a damn thing. So it's really nice to see all the young folks, the students, getting involved in something like this. And it makes me really hopeful about the future, because you guys have the knowledge and you have the power to make it happen. With your vote, you have so many more tools to learn and gather information than we did back then, and you need to take advantage of that and speak out and let your voice known that you do not want to be part of the generation where killing is accepted just because people are different. It needs to change, and the power is shifting to your hands now, so please take that and run with it, and know that we veterans will be behind you 150%.
40 years ago, I was in Beirut, Lebanon, doing my alternative service as a conscientious objector to the war in Vietnam. So that's where I first met Riyad Haddad, a student from Basra who was studying at Agazian College. I don't know what's happened to Riyad. I know he's safe, but I also know he's in exile somewhere because his home, Iraq, was no longer a hospitable place for a Christian Iraqi to live. As George and I were lighting candles, a young black man approached us and asked what this was all about. He's on his way to Iraq with the Air Force. He's at McGuire Air Force Base in April. He's there because it was a better alternative than living as a young black man in Oakland, California. I never come to Washington without remembering that my great-grandfather died from malaria as a soldier in the Civil War here in this swamp. And I'm still involved today because I have 3 daughters. And on their mother's side, their name is McChrystal. And their Uncle Stanley is responsible for what our troops are doing in Afghanistan and what they were doing in Iraq. The history of poverty and race and genocide and war is woven through all of our lives in that way. And it's only by walking out the other side that will make a difference. And thank you, Doug, for making this lesson a way that many will learn about that.
The military. I joined like that young African American man you were talking about. You know, it's an alternative. I stayed in the government all my life until 7 years ago today. And that's when I resigned in opposition to the war. And it's a thrill to be with good people like you of good conscience, who are, as this young lady said, you know, are the basis of most Americans, really, I think, in their heart. They don't like what our governments do.
If they knew. There's been many times in the years that I've been doing things as an activist that I wished more people would be there too, but I don't know, as time's gone by through the great sorrow and tragedy that war is, it's times like this that you really feel such a warmth in your heart and make friendships that, I mean, I've made some of the greatest friends I've ever had throughout the last number of years in standing up against this war. And in my community, we have a very strong, we are a community, and we have worked hard to let the Iraqi people know that we care about them, and they do, and we have seen that happen. So be hopeful and know that you can make a difference. And I think it's really important to talk to children about why it's important to solve problems peacefully, and it's important to talk to children about why you want to see peace, and know that you really can make a difference. And even though there's just a small group of people here, you can really make a difference.
I went into the Navy as a 17-year-old for economic reasons. I've never made any secret of that. It worked for me. It afforded me a good middle-class life. It took me a long time to understand that what I thought I was doing then was meaningless, because it's just an endless thing that goes on and on and on. And it's all about power. And we are here in the center of that imperial power now. And that's one of the reasons I am here. It is about economics. There's so many people that come up, and we were talking to Salam the other day, and he's saying the same thing. In Iraq, people will join the military because they don't have anything else to do. They pay them a pittance, but that's all they've got. A pittance is better than nothing. So it is an economic thing, and we have to understand that. That's where the interest is. It is in the corporations. And they buy and put puppets in that mansion over there. That's what they're doing. They're just pimping and whoring for the corporations, and that's a big part of the problem. I work for one of them. Ever since then, I've been an advocate for a death penalty for corporations. I'm serious. So that's where the power is. We're in the center of it, and it's really up to us. I learned a little bit too late, young people. You gotta listen to the older people now. We're telling you how it is. And it's gonna be up to you. We dealt you dirty because we kept it going. But better to wake up than not to.
My friends and my peers and my family, people I love at the core of my being. and who shaped me to be the person that I am could be easily on that side, and they're not. They're alive today, but they're connected to this side, and they suffer from that every single day, and we all suffer from it, and it's so difficult to think that we set ourselves up to be put in a situation where people I love can cause that, and I don't want anybody to be in that pain. I don't want that. I want to sever that connection right now. I'm glad it's here and I can share it with you guys, but I'd like us to move that direction, because it's just gonna kill us all.
Probably 2 nights ago, and she said that our greatest export in America is weapons. That's something to talk to other people about, and ask other people what they think about. You know, first of all, ask them what they think our greatest export is, and I think they'll be surprised to hear that it's weapons. What's that say about us as a country?
Iraq Memorial to Life, and is now becoming a part of it, are the memorial placards for the children. Also inscribed in Arabic, that were known about in 2006 when the Cape Cod chapter of Veterans for Peace and other peace organizations put together that memorial several years ago. So help us continue this memory, and we've invited some speakers who have a particular relationship to it. Today you'll hear from Iraq veteran Josh Stever. Josh will then introduce Salam Talib, and then we will also hear from Mark Johnson, and Cindy Sheehan will close this after everyone's brief remarks. Josh.
Well, good morning, everybody. It was a little bit after 2001 when I was only a few miles from here, down at the Pentagon, looking at the big hole in the wall there, and felt the call to action, and felt the call like I needed to do something to help my country. And I'd like to think that the majority of people symbolized there and remembered on this side of the field are people with that similar mindset who wanted to do something positive, whether it be in their own lives or for the lives of people in their country. So I'd like to hope that that's the majority of the attitudes of people who are laying here, but somewhere along the line we stopped thinking about the people who are laying here, and as we saw suffering in our own country, we didn't make that connection to suffering that would happen in another country. And just thinking back on some of the things that we said on a day-to-day basis in the military, one of our war cries was, kill them all, let God sort them out. And today, to take a step back and to look at this field here, which is just a small portion of that mindset and that ideology, of that lack of care for our innocent life, to make jokes about it and to yell about it, or in military songs that we would sing, where we would say, when I get to hell, Satan's gonna say, how'd you earn your living? How'd you earn your pay? And I'll reply with a boot to his chest, earn my living laying Hajis to rest. And that was something that we sang regularly too. And I hope as we walk past this field here, which again is only a small portion of the people that we have laid to rest, that connection that was broken between people stepping up and wanting to do something positive and wanting to help their country could lead to something like this. And along the way where we become callous, and where whether it's in the military singing songs like that or just day to day living back here where we read these numbers in newspaper articles or we see the death toll scroll across the bottom of a news screen, and just how desensitized that we can become to actual human lives. So just wanted to thank all of you for being here today and for trying to reestablish that conscience and reestablish that humanity that can be so easy to be lost, whether it's on this side or whether we can stop caring about people on this side who wanted to do something positive, but whether through lack of creativity or stereotypes or just hatred or whatever the reason would be, couldn't think of a better way to try and help people that ended up here. So as we join together today to remember both sides of the field, I hope that we can take a step back and remember human life lost on both sides, and remember the different things in our day-to-day lives that can take away from that common humanity. And again, just thank you for being out here to try and reestablish that. And I just want to take a minute too to thank Doug and to thank Mark and Salam, who's not here yet, and some other faces I recognize on the trip that I took, and all the different people who supported me along the way as I traveled across the country and tried to adjust to coming back as a soldier, and to both honor the people on this side of the field, but to reconsider the people on this side of the field. And just thank you for this community and for the support that everyone is to each other. And I guess as we wait for Salam, just take a minute to thank you for all those different things and for the remembrance and the humanity that we're both mourning and also coming together to reestablish and celebrate today.
Thank you.
I would like to let everyone know about the web blog that Josh and Connor established. Please take the time to go and read the blog that is entitled Contagious Love Experiment. Josh, I want to thank you on behalf of those of us that read and have read, well, maybe not all of it because you're still posting, but it goes into the depth of our religions and how the religious framework of the cultures is a important part for us to examine and to understand. Thank you for that effort. I'd like to invite up Jeff Lentz from the Toledo area, where the Northwest Ohio Peace Coalition has put together their display and installation, to say a few words. Jeff.
Yeah, about 6 years ago when we started this, the first time we set it up, maybe just over 1,000. Just over 1,000 we put up on the University of Toledo campus and on a hill, and we were so busy stretching strings and making sure everything was right, and by the end of the afternoon we got down and looked up the hill, and you know, the power of what we had put together just overwhelmed us. And I don't think any of us ever thought that, you know, it would grow this big. Of course, we should have known that war is going to continue. What we wanted to do was present the human cost of war in real time, real space, and make people think about it. And what I wanted them to think was, you know, these guys, they made a choice, whether it was based on a lie, maybe it was based on the economy, no job, health care, whatever. These guys made a choice, but this side didn't make a choice. This side had no choice. People on Wall Street made a choice. The people in these buildings made a choice, just like they've been doing for 200 years. I guess that's what I wanted to come away thinking. Thanks.
Thank you. And please take the time to thank the group that came over. One way to do that is to help them tomorrow. While we're waiting for Salam, I'd like to introduce the Executive Director of the Fellowship of Reconciliation. The Fellowship of Reconciliation is still the oldest and largest peace organization in this country, has very rich relationship to Dr. King's movement, to Amnesty International, to the International Proclamation of Human Rights. And Mark will tell us a little bit more about that. Mark Johnson.
Thank you, Doug. Good morning. When I woke up this morning, I was drawn back to an occasion on the other end of the spectrum. We'll have to wait for the sirens to go by if we want to hear me. Yeah. But I was drawn back to another occasion when a monument to the war dead was presented. Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address in 179 words. He said, "The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget." And he said, "It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work." I think that describes for us effectively our gathering as well. Doug mentioned that one of the ways in which the names of individuals were gathered here is through an organization called the Iraq Body Count. And I just want to share the principles or the rationale that they use for focusing on individuals and their names. They say the human cost of war must be recorded. Knowledge of war deaths must be available to all. A new human understanding of conflict which places the security needs of ordinary people above the interest of regimes or state powers. U.S. citizens bear particular responsibility for events in Iraq. This electoral democracy in which voters and taxpayers share in the responsibility of our government's action makes us all accountable. I use that for the premise of my following remarks, a prose poem, One Too Many. The epigraph is a quotation from the Secretary of State, General Colin Powell, who said, "We don't count enemy dead." One too many. Nor should we. Not enemy dead, not war dead, not allied dead, not civilian dead. But we should name them. By name they were known. By name they are remembered. By name they are honored. We ought not to ask how many. One is too many. We ought to ask who. Who is this sister? Who is this brother? Who is this mother, father, son, daughter, aunt, uncle, cousin, friend? One too many. Who was Samar Hussein? From Manaria, Telkana, Zambarina. Manaria from Manar, meaning light. Samar Hussein, from a village of light. 13 years old. Who was Samar Hussein? A 13-year-old girl. Perhaps the first in the attack on Iraq to have died, and whose name we know from March 20th, 2003. One too many. When one life is lost, a world is lost. Each son and each daughter. A world of descendants, a nation of peoples, will never be. One too many is named here again and again and again and again. I want to, thank you. I want to introduce Cindy Sheehan, and I'm not sure if Salam is here yet. We've all met Cindy in many ways. This is the second chance I've had to introduce her in Richmond, or Charlottesville, Virginia, as she was starting her campaign for Congress a few years ago. But we've all met and known Cindy through one name too many. She and Salam will help bridge these two bodies of memory with their remarks and with markers this morning. Welcome, Cindy.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I'd like to welcome you to not just a memorial, but Camp Out Now, our anti-war peace camp in the shadow of this corrupt and murderous government. And this happens so much. Cindy's starting to talk. Let's fly a helicopter there. So I'd also like to acknowledge that there are some other Gold Star families here today. There's Kevin and Joyce Lucy. Joyce, can you come up, please? Just come. You don't have to say anything. Their son came home from Iraq, but he couldn't find the help he needed. So he's one of the statistics of suicide, which we know keeps on increasing. As the war increases, as funding for the VA decreases, we know that our soldiers aren't getting the help that they need. And one of Camp Out Now's demands is not only reparations for the people of Iraq and Afghanistan, full reparations, but fund the VA system fully. And you know what? If we had single-payer healthcare, we wouldn't need the VA hospital system, by the way. So, Joyce and I were just talking, and Missy Beatty is here. Her nephew Chase was killed in Iraq on August 6, 2005, the same day I went to Crawford, Texas for the very first time from the Veterans for Peace Convention. But Joyce and I were talking about her son's birthday was last Thursday. My son's death day is coming up on April 4th. And we were talking about not how bad every day is. You know, every day we have to face the facts that our children are dead for no reason. You know, that our children should be alive, and all of these people, you know, each one represents probably about 100 people that should be alive. Each one represents untold numbers of people left behind that are suffering because of these losses. And we have to deal with this every day. Every day until Joyce and I are gone, we have to deal with the deaths of our children. And then we have the special days, their birthdays, their death days, holidays, the birthdays of their siblings, anniversaries, the day they took their first step, the day we last saw them. So it's very important that we remember, no matter who's president, no matter who's in Congress, people are being slaughtered, and we can't stop working to prevent that slaughter, to prevent that heartache. So thank you so much for being out here today.
Okay, I really didn't come with anything prepared to say, but I will say the night before Jeffrey died, he talked to the vet center. He was in crisis, and they knew he was suicidal. And in the notes that were left by them, they said, Jeffrey said, nobody cares enough to help. And I think the next day he was gone. And I think that's a horrible statement for any veteran to have to say after he served his country. And we live with that every day. We live with the fact that Jeffrey was tortured for 11 months in his soul and his mind when he came back, and there was nobody, there was no outreach, there was no help. We brought him to the VA on June 5th, and his grandfather, who lost his only brother in World War II, begged them to do something to help his grandson, and they did nothing. So I think we have a lot to do in this country, and that's, thank you. Thank you.
There's really no way for us to thank Cindy Sheehan for her efforts. At the website for Piece of the Action, there is a connection to Mario Savio's video where he speaks about sometimes the action becomes so egregious that you must throw yourself on the machine to stop the machine. It may not be a way of throwing ourselves on the machine to honor the civilian life like Margaret Hassan, the UN peace worker who was kidnapped and later killed due to the invasion of the United States. But some of the people who helped the machine continue to run are stopping by the memorial and asking, what is this? What does this mean? What is it for? So we approached Salam Hassan and Cindy Sheehan about the idea of bridging the gap to help people understand that there is a connection between the civilian loss. There's a connection in our hearts to all people, all people. So Cindy has the marker for Casey, and then on behalf of Salam Talib, Mark Johnson. So joining Katie is Josh Stieber, who will be placing a marker for someone. Do you want to say anything?
Sure. This marker is for a friend of mine that I had in the Army who was in my company. His name was James Harrelson, and he died on a road that I drove down regularly, and it makes you really ask the question, you know, why was he the one that the bomb would go off on and not me? And it really makes you think about what's important in your life. And to certain degrees, I think we're all at that point now as we look at all these markers here and the marker in my hand and the markers in front of us to ask ourselves, you know, are we going to continue to push to create the world that we want to live in and to reduce the number of markers, especially the markers that we lead to with our own hands, or do we want to continue to ignore the different numbers and walk past memorials like this and not think about it? And it's really a question of humanity to both honor the dead and honor the living, to live our lives to promote a world and promote a culture where we can solve problems differently. And a lot of times that might take sacrifice and take effort, but so does all of this, and I'd rather do it for peace. Thank you.
So there will be other markers that join the bridge, Margaret Hassan's, and an 8-month-old Rowan Suleiman marker that's embroidered in front of you in the center.
So, Salam Talib, tell us a little bit about what it was like 7 years ago for you in Iraq.
Days like these 7 years ago, we were under the bombing itself, which is thousands of airplanes just showed up on the air and they start striking everywhere. And I remember like seeing the flames everywhere. Yeah, it's horrendous to be here now, remembering this, and it's a very short time, but it's 7 years. It seems to be very short, but it's really 7 years. I can't believe that.
It certainly brings many kinds of emotions to people's memory when they think about their experience. Maybe it was here in the States watching television. The experience for the Iraqi people is one that people in this country have a very hard time understanding. Can you help us have a better understanding of what it might be like for people of Iraq?
It was horrifying because people, even though they have used to that from previous wars and they experienced the same experience very much in 1991, but the people who haven't experienced that, they were terrified, of course. They didn't know what to do. So most of them, they left their main cities and they went to the countryside because the idea was that the American military would target the main cities, not the countryside, because it's not worth it. There's no infrastructure there very much. They're not going to attack farms and stuff. Even though that happens in several occasions, and the reason for that, they said that Saddam was hiding some weapons in those farms. But still, that was the idea that we developed from 1991 war, that to move to the countryside, that would be safer. But people has some, it was better than 91 because people expect something and they actually save some food and they stock some stuff, and it got them through the war pretty much. It was easier food-wise and water-wise. But it still was very scary when the military started getting in and they start actually targeting civilians, and that wasn't expected from the military. And as the flyers that were throwing out of the airplanes all the time, saying that if you are a civilian, you should have a white flag and you're not going to get shot and stuff. But in many occasions, that lots of people actually believe that. And the majority of people did believe that, and the military was nice about it in many occasions, but there were a lot of mistakes happened, and lots of civilians got shot.
And that was something that started 7 years ago, and it continued. You came to the United States after that. Tell us a little bit about your time period up until you left Iraq.
I was a computer engineer before the war, and I was doing programming and stuff, and I wasn't working for the government or anything, but I was working in private industry, and my English was very limited to the needs. Then when the war happened, Iraq, like Baghdad in particular, stopped functioning about 4 months before the war. Then after that, then when the war started, the things get even more complicated. That the jobs market just dropped down. There's no electricity at all, so any jobs that has to do with electricity stopped. And the companies weren't hiring, the contractors weren't hiring. So I went and found a job for myself as a translator for journalists and for NGOs, and I was driving them around sometimes and So I worked with a lot of independent journalists, famous names, maybe Dar Jamal, Naomi Klein, Andy Sterin, famous, lots of famous people came to Iraq, and I worked with them.
Some of the people that lost their lives, they're in this memorial, were there too.
Yeah.
So, did you work with Richard Wilde? Or
I worked with Richard Wilde, and we supposed to leave to Kirkuk the day before he was shot. The next day we were supposed to go to Kirkuk, and we were spending the night in some friend's house together. And he, in the morning, he just decided to go by himself. He said he's gonna just have some footage from the university. And we're like, all right, and when we get back, we can just go and have some, we'll go to Kirkuk, supposedly. And when he came back, when he left, he went to the museum in the university, and just somebody was talking to the military soldiers, and when he left, somebody just grabbed a pistol and shot him in the back of his head, according to the military story. And about at night we missed him, so we started looking around, and at night the military came to the house and they told us that he was shot, and they took all his stuff from the house and they said we're gonna give that to his family.
I guess you have no way of knowing what really happened to it. But,
we never know what happened, actually. We never know.
I know we've talked sometimes about how confusing things were. You can tell us a little bit about the time that you were looking for your mother. You didn't know where she was, and you had, I'd say, a traumatic. I don't mean to repeat, the sad stories, but what happened that time when you didn't know where your mom was?
I mean, it's not just for me. It's a very common thing there that with car bombs and lots of violence, you think that anybody that is late, he was killed. That's the first thing you kind of think about. So when my family members, they will not show up, or they are in a place wherever there's some incident happened, like car bomb or military actions or whatever, you will think that they got killed. Like my mother was one time, she didn't show up till late, and she couldn't just get a transportation back, but we thought that she was killed, and we were looking for in the morgue for her, and we end up having to go through hundreds of bodies just piled up like chicken in just a warehouse, and we end up not finding her after we go through a couple hundred bodies. And then we went home, and she was home, and especially there weren't any cell phones or anything. So yeah, that's a typical story. Anyone in Iraq will talk to you will have this kind of story to tell you.
The American public sometimes talks about numbers of people killed or that are dead, and you had mentioned a way of looking at it, that there were a certain number of people in the country, and if you imagine that there were a certain number of families, then, I mean, from that perspective, you came up with a number that is similar to the high numbers that other people have said. How does that work again?
Iraq population is 25 million, and statistically, when people look at like the stats, when they do the calculation, they will take random sample, and random sample could be the families that I know. So in each family, let's assume that every family is 25 people, which is
like aunts and uncles and
no,
but
just
one
like
family.
Just one family, let's say 25 people, and which is not a real number. There is no family 25 people.
Yeah.
Maybe it could be extended family, but not real, just like brothers and sisters, first siblings.
Yeah.
But let's assume that, which is a very big number, and every single family that I know, they have lost one member at least in the family, including my family. We lost one. and we are just 11. So we lost one in the 11, and then the extended families, of course, they lost more than one. So assuming that every 25 members of a family lost one, that will give you a number of 1 million people get killed.